The Depth to Delve Deep by Rote Writer. Chapter 59 The Inn. It's a bit rough the first week at the hostel with only a few hours' work. Rote incurs daily debts just staying there. So few hours available, has to push his hopes for a position next door at the inn. He goes in there and meets the manager after talking to the deputy manager. He's hired as a bartender, again with no questions asked, just an account to deposit his pay. This is great news, though the pay period of the inn works out in a way that he will not collect pay from work for at least 3 weeks. He always hold 2 weeks back. That's okay as long as he's paid. He can live on bread and water. He progresses to buying digestive cookies. They're so cheap, so filling, and so good too. At the end of the week in Avalon, he's working as a bartender at the inn next door and as the dishwasher at the hostel. By the end of the third week, he has a third job cleaning the bar at the hostel. He gets paid in cash from the hostel once a week, work week. Rote's in desperate need of a new hairdo. He seeks out a salon to have his hair cut, to clean up his act completely. He leaves the hairdresser in a huff, for his puff of hair is hewn torn into a tonsure. His roots are uprooted. He's shorn like a sheep. He leaves the salon sick-sighted and decided never to return in spring. He'll turn his frown upside down, for he knows his hair, like his intake, will grow by inch increments. Ah, the inn where he pours perfect pints of Guinness, the stout that takes 2 weeks to turn, also known as the blonde in a black dress. Besides stouts, he serves ports and bitters from the area. In the interim, all the income goes directly into his account. He lives on his pay from the hostel, leaving what's in the bank to grow. It begins to accrue like his hairdo. He's a bit blue. The first 3 weeks are incredibly hard. He's not getting any sleep in the dorm. Now that he's working 3 jobs, the need for sleep only intensifies. His diet isn't helping matters much either. Nevertheless, through dogged determination, he continues to work week after week while his bank account grows. Slowly, he reimburses his friend who owns the hostel, and with whatever left, he shops wisely at the supermarket. He's always surprised how far a pound goes in Britain. A beautifully fresh loaf of bread costs 35 pence. His digestive cookies are 40 pence. His water is free, fresh, and anointed, no less. He's okay, though. If he has only one wish day in and day out, it will be sleep. Unadulterated, uninterrupted, not to be. Meanwhile, Rote never tires admiring the inn where he works. It's in every sense of the word authentic. The outside face or facade of the entrance seethes with antiquity. The stained glass mullioned windows highlight the paneled stone front for all to see that walk past it. It's built with purpose in the 1400s and stands as the oldest public house in southwest England. Rote makes note of the address, 1 High Street. He believes the George Hotel and Pilgrims Inn has for centuries provided a place for pilgrims to rest. These days, there's a new age of pilgrims. Inside the inn, the wooden beams of oak are so old in age and bent out of shape from duration of time, not to mention the worn-down cobble mixed with stone promenading through the inn. Again, Rote marvels, for on foot, horse, and carriage people come through night and day, given the incredible indentations that pockmark the contoured causeway. The pub itself is rich in history, from ceiling to floor, not to mention all the secret little doors, leading this way and that way. The grandest of the secret doors can be found down the tiny cramped stone stairs. They twist below the inn, turning around to the ground of the cellar. Rote goes down the tiny stone twirl like a cellarer, and is immediately hit with the same air breathed by the abbots long ago. 500-year-old air plus air has an overbearing quality to it, and Rote breathes it in almost every day with great joy and wine. He can't help but feel on all planes of existence he's being transported back to medieval times, like some music. Like music, so does smell swell the senses and memory. The air and aura down in the cellar is so intense. The immutable forces or events that have transpired in the historical cellar run through Rote, just like the runnels or drainage troughs run through the floor of the vault like vacuumed interior. At the far end of the cellar there is a door. The door leads to and through a tiny portal into a tunnel traversing several hundred yards, if not 1,000, underneath High Street, right into the abbey grounds. The abbots back in the day can't be too careful. while the dissolution deserts Henry VIII is serving up. Total and complete destruction. It all adds to the lore of the inn. Rote learns Henry VIII might have harbored himself in the inn, not only to take time from his wanting wives, but to admire the handiwork emanating from his edicts. He may have watched the terrible toll not only on the abbey but the abbots themselves. The abbots are hung on top of the tower, then drawn and quartered while the abbey is destroyed. And as the reigning king leaves, the villagers, likened to pillagers, gather the stones and broken mortar to build their own homes. Rote goes down in the cellar of the wonderful inn. He sticks his head into the tiny tunnel leading surely into another dimension. The deputy manager is with him and mentions to Rote how he crawls through to see how far it goes. He lets Rote know his bearings when the burrow below crawling are incredibly cramped. He figures he makes it halfway across the street outside the inn before reaching an impasse in the tunnel. Rote flaunts the haunts of the inn's dens and shocks his deputy manager doing so. He does so unbeknownst to his deputy manager, who organizes a film crew from overseas to stake out the haunted nature of the inn. He usurps him. On a whim, Rote leads the film crew down below into the cellar and gives his own account of the haunted nature of the inn. They're quite taken, not so much by the belief of the beyond, but by the possibility and the delivery of the daunting and haunting nature Rote somehow supernaturally seemingly summons on their behalf. The odd deputy manager isn't pleased. He has his own agenda, namely educating the film crew on his knowledge of the abbots themselves. They're not so taken by his tale. They're still taken by the tale Rote tells. But the deputy manager insists and persists that the story must be about the abbots. They'll have none of it, and leave because of it. Some people tell better stories. They even come into the pub in the inn and ask Rote more. He tells them none other than Jimmy Page, the legendary rock group Led Zeppelin, stays at the inn not so long ago. The deputy manager is usurped again, for the deputy manager, along with the chef, let Rote know a few weeks before the film crew arrived about the rock legend stay at the inn. Rote also learns from the deputy manager that the pinnacle of the publishing house of Samuel Weiser also proves patronage not so long ago. It seems Samuel Weiser makes it big on the back of the beast in the book of Revelation. His publishing house publishes the collected works of Aleister Crowley. Jimmy Page knows who Aleister Crowley is. Jimmy Page at one time owns a manor Aleister Crowley owns and lives up in Scotland. The Boleskine House is where Crowley performed the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. Perhaps Page thought that energy might still be there and inspire his music back when he bought it in 1970. A year later, Led Zeppelin released Stairway to Heaven. Rote knows the ending to this song sounds a lot like a main theme and scene in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes the fire shall be woken. A light from the shadow shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. And as we wind on down the road, our shadows taller than our soul, there walks a lady we all know, who shines white light and wants to show how everything still turns to gold. And if you listen very hard, the tune will come to you at last, when all are one and one is all, to be a rock and not to roll. And she's buying a Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. It's hard to tell how much of Rote's life has been influenced by these two potent parables. And to think Jimmy Page stays at the end. Wow. Rote's sure many songs by Led Zeppelin have been influenced by Aleister Crowley and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like Misty Mountain Hop and The Battle of Evermore, both released in 1971. Rote wonders if Samuel Weiser and Jimmy Page know each other. It seems a bit of a coincidence. They both stay at the inn around the same time. Rote has no problem relaying the rock star's stay in the inn along with the publisher not more than a month before the film crew arrived. It's to the dismay of Rote's deputy manager. Rote's deputy manager is quite a character, an odd fellow in every sense of the word. He has a strange way about him. Seems interested in the Knights Templars and the Abbots' historical significance and relevance to the inn. The deputy manager welcomes warmly the next guests of note to the inn, the vicars. Rote not so much. They visit the inn annually during their summer pilgrimage. So do the priests. One day it's the Protestants, and the next it's the Catholics. On their day, one or the other will first walk down High Street to Market Cross, and then turn on Magdalen Street to the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey. They do so respectively and separately on Saturday and Sunday stopovers. Afterwards, they'll come in the inn. There they will hum and haw their hymns to an awful din. It's a sin. Rote makes sure he's off both those days. He has no interest in their benedictions. Rote returns to work the Monday after. He finds the inn and the innkeepers, the deputy manager, as well as some of the staff aren't pleased he's nowhere to be found during their busiest weekend of the year. Oh well. One thing Rote knows for sure, not only is his relationship with them falling apart, so too is the inn. The inn begins to fall apart during and after the vicars and priests leave. It seems the inn really is haunted. Things standing for centuries are all of a sudden coming apart. First, it's the old fireplace by the bar, adorned with Dutch Delft tiles. Bits and pieces are spewing from a chute no longer in use. What makes it so weird is the flue is shut. How can chunks of mortar and brick at the most odd times, almost as if in a paranormal nature, all of a sudden come through a closed flue? And then there's the stools. Stools that have been sat upon solidly for some time are now falling apart over with patrons still seated. It happens every time a different person sits down, sometimes to the same person more than once, though alcohol probably plays a part. It does when the deputy manager sits upon one of them. When Rote sees the deputy manager fall, he thinks now they'll get some new stools. Oddly, no. It isn't enough to requisition a new one or put the one that's the problem aside. This bothers Rote a bit. He knows the chances of someone hurting themselves increases with each fall. The odds are increasing for that to happen, and then what? He is the bartender, and usually the only one in at the inn at times. At times, he wonders if anyone there working has any idea what responsible behavior looks like. What really bothers him are the bathrooms, mainly the men's washroom, specifically one of the urinals. This one urinal leaks profusely to the point of Rote has to put an out of order sign on it. Unfortunately, when a drunk has to go, the sign suffers. Periodically, he refits, readjusts, or just removes and writes another sign to prevent patrons from pissing into it. He finally pressures the deputy manager and manager to fix it. They take offense at being told what to do. What's he to do? He's on the receiving end, figuratively and literally, from pissed off patrons who come in day and night complaining about the urinals. And not a damn thing is done. It's not the urinals or the falling bits and pieces of bricks and mortar. It's the ceiling, the final haunt to freakishly occur after the men of cloth leave. Happens when the ceiling in the waiting room by the bar collapses. It reveals a thatch worked well over 500 years old. After weeks of doing nothing to fix any of the problems, Rote's ire is wild. He's constantly on the receiving end of the bitterness that all drunks thrive on. Rote suggests to the manager and deputy manager, why not cover the hole with a glass window to see into it and place a plaque, to kind of say that it's all part of the authentic nature of the inn's innards. Rote thinks it's a good idea, and so do they, though it irks them that it's not theirs. They know now the wicker-like wattle and dovetail between the floors, ceilings, and walls portrays an arcane portal into the past. Rote's pleased, for after much pressure from him alone, they finally take care of all the problems, thanks to his constant prodding. By this is his stay with his work and welcome strains, causes him concern. His relationship then becomes caustic. A real resentment grows, and it shows. They don't like the thought that they will have to be pressured to do their jobs. And in truth, Rote really has no business concerning himself with it all, save for his own concern for the inn and the patrons with him. And then there's their relationship with one another. The manager and the deputy manager are closer than usual. They seem to think no one knows about that. They keep it quiet, probably because the proprietors of the inn may not look too favorably on them being in a relationship. Rote couldn't care less for them or their relationship, but when their liaison affects their work ethic, which affects all the staff, including him and the inn, then he has no choice but to act upon it. It's gross. Their relationship, that is. Just the sight of them flirting is enough to get Rote looking for a place to go. More often than not, they're drunk. That means they're in the inn drinking. And if that's not bad enough, They make irrational decisions and dictates in their drunken stupor. Rote, shocked by their absolute lack of authority or action in any matter, let alone their appointed positions, they prance. Luckily, Rote really likes the rest of the crew at the inn, all interesting in their own right. Their tones and intonations ring in Rote's ears wonderfully. He loves to hear their English accents and eccentricities. The chef, for one, is a fine fellow who introduces Rote to an English breakfast. Blood pudding or brown pudding dyed black with bacon and sausage and fried tomatoes. That's one taste he can't get used to. Tomatoes were never meant to be fried. In the morning, after Rote serves breakfast to the guests, he has his own, the rest of the staff. He will start serving drinks in the inn pub at 11 a.m. and won't stop until 11 p.m. When he gets a chance, he'll have his complimentary cultural cuisine for dinner. The clientele who come in during lunch and supper have their fair share of food. Gammon steak, another term he learns to mean ham, and ploughman platters, a catch name for cheese chunks or baguettes. They're the most popular plates served along with the a la carte menu. Often other staff at the inn will help Rote serve the food when it gets too busy. He's often surprised when they do. He knows some of the staff members wear their titles a little too tightly, though they're always friendly. One co-worker, a self-described tart, engagingly endears Rote's ear with her constant need for what seems to be a creed for the English to seek agreement for what's said with a yeah or an all right. He figures the yeah has origins with many of England's German and Dutch roots. She's a little lovely that someone else holds. The clientele compliment the staff, a collection of characters from his regulars to the frequent freak Avalon attracts and so famously fosters. All told, a colorful crew. One older customer candidly confers to the barman how he shot 17 people during his time served as a policeman in the 50s and 60s while in Cyprus. And quite frankly, he'll do it again. Another fellow regularly has some renown in the community as being one of its original hippies. He opens one of the first metaphysical bookstores in Glastonbury, at a time when the Christian community discourages it, though to no avail, for High Street and Magdalen Street manage more metaphysical shops than most municipalities. Rote learns this fellow is mentioned in the front matter of a famous book that's somewhat of a cultural icon for and about Avalon. It's about an Arthurian legend from a woman's perspective. The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. This fellow comes in regularly. He has his own mug kept chilled behind the bar like a few others. Rote mentions something about a book he's written, a trilogy. He does so one day after learning that the fellow is somewhat of a publisher. Rote tells him the title when asked. It's tentatively titled A Means to an End to No Avail. The title comes to Rote well after the third or fourth draft, and it doesn't come easy. He's just finished revising for the umpteenth time what seems to be his final draft, and the realization comes to him. He realizes that after writing down his life and then reading it over and over with constant review, revisions, and rewrites, one constant remains. His life, no matter how lived or written, is a means to an end to no avail. When Rote tells his fellow the tentative title to his trilogy, he feels the response somewhat pompous and characteristic of the cat in question, though he does wonder initially, thinking, what the hell does that mean? Concluding it must mean common, the way it's touted from a British snout. Imagine calling Rote's tentatively titled book pedestrian. The nerve! Another one of Rote's clientele is renowned nefariously known. Yet his candid nature captures Rote completely. He fast becomes Rote's favorite client and friend. This fellow has seen and done dangerous things. He's had his fair share of fractious fiction. Another regular Rote serves brandishes beautifully and intellectually his disdain for one and all, accentuated by his bosom buddies. Curmudgeon crew makes the atmosphere in all the more fun. And behind the bar, Rote keeps is a dilapidated piece of parchment, and it postulates, no skulking loafers or flea-bitten tramps allowed. Occasionally, people whom he befriends from the vessel will come by on his ship. One woman in particular has just finished her own personal pilgrimage through the UK and France. She's, by Rote's summation, a genuine good person. She seems attracted to Rote. He's so tired and worn out from work that he can't find the strength to get something going with her. Another couple living in the hostel fly over from the other side of the Atlantic. They hop on a plane in Arizona after living in one, if not all, the states forming the Four Corners. They come to connect to their cosmos while making a life in Glastonbury. They are the quintessential hippie couple, and they are annoyingly always in earshot of everyone. Rote likes them both, but the fellow sometimes with his seldom raw, so drawn in its delivery sometimes draws on his disposition. She counters his way with her own. She's been fasting for weeks, and Rote seems to be the only one who can tell. Her partner still gets his food served to him by her, which makes Rote think some things don't change. The bar staff at the hotel, along with the kitchen, deli, and dining room, have in themselves each a story. But unlike the inn, wherein everyone who works there is a local, save for Rote, the hostel harbors and hires a hodgepodge of travelers. Travelers aside, Rote works at the inn next door as the barman, and he works in the hostel kitchen, doing the dishes periodically. He also has two shifts, Saturday and Sunday, cleaning the hostel's pub. This includes house cleaning duties. He takes advantage of this. It means he has access to the laundry facilities. On one occasion, while waiting for clothes to dry, a complete stranger with a Scottish accent comes right up to Rote. He shakes his hand and in return feels a supercharged handshake. Rote feels strengthened by the force the two meet and greet. He gets a strange sense of second sight after hearing the strider say, "You're not alone." Rote's not sure what the man means, but he's sure there are others who are on solar journeys much like him, hanging tough through trying times. Rote's alone afterwards to tend to his clothes, now always clean and pressed, while the shirts are ironed. He has to maintain his apparel, especially as a barkeep. Patrons are always quick to point out spots on his white shirts while they sip their suds.